What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Geek Pantheon, and today I have a very special treat for you. We are doing a review of Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden, the latest adventure from Wizards of the Coast for D&D 5th edition set in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. But before we get into the review, the obligatory social media plug. If you want to be part of the conversation surrounding this episode, you can head on over to the Geek Pantheon Facebook group. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at the Geek Pantheon. And we have a Discord that's probably the best place to be a part of the conversation. You can find the link to it on our website, thegeekpantheon.com, or in the description down below. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/thegeekpantheon, which is a great community full of wonderful people who support all the things that we do over here, from videos to podcasts to everything in between. And we have lots of great rewards tiers over there if you want to go check them out and join the community and be a part of that. But now, on to the review. So, Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. I'm going to do this in kind of a two-parter thing where I'm going to do mostly spoiler-free / any information that the players would have before the adventure starts, like character creation stuff, I'm going to include in the first part. And then we'll get into some of the more spoilery bits. I'm not going to get into everything because this story in this is worth reading. And I don't want to just do a deep dive into every aspect of the book, convince you to go buy it, and there's like, oh, he told us everything. So yeah, I'm not going to get into all the spoilers, but I will get into more of what I like and don't like about the adventure in the second half of the video. But I'll put up a disclaimer, all that kind of stuff. So, Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. Do I think you should buy it? Yeah. I think it's actually really good. It's much more of an emphatic yes, you should buy this. It's one of the stronger adventures from Wizards of the Coast. I think it might be top 3 for me of the published adventure modules that they have produced in terms of content and story structure and just everything. Overall, it's a very well done book. It's a very strong story. And there are a bunch of different reasons why I think that. And I'm going to get into some of them here, but a lot of them deal with the twists and turns that this adventure takes you on. And some of the truly shocking and terrifying moments that lie within these pages. So, yeah, I do like the book. And the tone of it is interesting to me because they're going very much for a horror kind of aesthetic. And they talked about influences like John Carpenter's The Thing. There's an alien reference in here. And not reference, like a xenomorph doesn't show up, but there's definitely inspiration in the book. And I love that. I think it's great. But the only potential issue I think you might run into is the fact that D&D and horror don't mix super well just from concept. D&D is about being heroes and epic adventurers and doing the impossible. And horror is predicated on fear and vulnerability. And those two things have a hard time marrying one another. But it can be done. If you are considering running this adventure, I would highly recommend that you dive back into your Dungeon Master's Guide and look at the survival rules and environmental hazards and things like that, because that is going to be a huge tool for this book, and they reference it a lot, especially the environmental hazards when dealing with cold. That is vital to this adventure running in any kind of way that was intended by the authors. Now, that's not to say that you can't handwave all that stuff and run this as a big, epic adventure where the heroes come in to rescue the people of Icewind Dale. That's absolutely something that you can do, and you can run it that way. You're just going to get a different experience than what was intended by the authors, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just different. But if you're wanting to run this as a horror-esque game, then you definitely need to be okay with making the characters feel vulnerable and using the rules to do that. And you need to have players that are interested in that kind of game. Some players aren't going to be interested in having their super epic, awesome hero be made vulnerable and be told your character is scared right now. When they're like, no, my character is never scared. It's like, well, they are. So yeah, that's the potential hurdle that I will give warning to. I think there is plenty of stuff in this book to steal and mine, so I would still recommend going out and picking it up. But in terms of actually running the adventure, you need to have players that are bought into the concept of horror, or you just need to acknowledge that you're not going to have that element of the adventure and just run the story part of it. Now, another thing, this adventure obviously starts at level 1, like many of the D&D adventure modules do, And a lot of DMs, myself included, tend to skip the early levels. Start at level 3, let them have a couple cool abilities, they're not quite as squishy, and you can move forward from there. This adventure necessitates starting where it intends you to start, in my opinion, from a storytelling standpoint. Because the time that the adventurers spend getting from level 1 to level 4, they are spending getting to know the world and getting to know the people around them. And if you take that out and just say you all have been here for a while helping people, then things that happen later on in the story aren't going to have the same impact they would if the players have been in the area actually playing for a while. So I would recommend ignoring the impulse to start at chapter 2 or even chapter 3 and hand-waving the other stuff and start at chapter 1. Start at level 1 and have them work their way up through it. Okay, so one last thing before I get into my super spoiler review, that this is kind of a weird middle ground, where this is an element that the players will know about from the outset, but they're not going to know all of it. This book introduces character secrets. They basically stuck a hidden role game into a D&D adventure, which is awesome. I love it. I love hidden role games, so when I saw this option, I was like, yes, let's do it. So I'm going to talk about some of my favorite hidden roles, but if you are a player who does not want to know anything about any of the hidden roles until one is dealt to you, and that's the only one that you know something about, then your time has come to exit off the video. I would love for you to stick around, but I don't want to ruin things for you. So if you're that type of player, then feel free to skedaddle, or if you're a DM who just wants to have the joy of reading these on your own in the book, then feel free to go. But I'm going to talk about character secrets, what I like about them, and one that I might potentially cut. But yeah, so bye. Okay, they're gone. So character secrets. They are things that you can print out and pass out to your players. Or if you're on like Roll20, you can just digitally give it to them, obviously. But they have a secret, a background secret. There's one that's you are a doppelganger. So you have to, all of a sudden you create this character and it's like, oh, I'm not a dwarf. Or I'm not a dragonborn. I'm a doppelganger who is parading around as one. Cool. Or there is one where you are a reincarnate. A druid cast a reincarnate spell on your body sometime recently, and you were brought back to life. And so then you have to create this whole additional backstory to your actual backstory that is, what was your life like the first time around? And so that's super cool and super fun. Another great one is Runaway Author, which is that you're on the run because you revealed a bunch of devil worshippers back in your town. And so you're trying to hide out up here, and you actually have some devils that come after you at some point in the adventure. The low light for me, and it's just, I think because I'm not a huge Forgotten Realms fan, and I've never read any of the R.A. Salvatore books, there is one that is just, your character is a Dritzt fanboy. That's all it is. It doesn't even really play into the adventure that much. It's just a fun thing for if your table is super into Forgotten Realms and the books, then you can have a character who's a fanboy. That's it. I would eliminate that one because A, I don't find it that compelling and I would hate to waste a character secret on that. And B, most of the players at my table also feel that way. And they would get that and be like, oh, half the people at my table would be like, who? Who am I a fan of? So that one's a fun little insider gimmick, but I would eliminate it from my table. One that you might want to eliminate from your table, but is personally my favorite, because once again, I am chaotic as a dungeon master, is the Slod Egg one. Or Slod Host. A red Slod put an egg in you a little bit before you started your adventuring career. And you have 2 months until the egg hatches and pops out your chest and you die. Like, your character has a literal ticking time bomb in their chest. And the tadpole will erupt from your chest if you don't get it dealt with. And it gets into how to deal with it. And a really cool thing that they do is they integrate these character secrets through the adventure. And they'll have moments where it says, if you have a PC with the Slod Host secret, now would be a cool time to have that happen if they haven't dealt with it. Or if you have a runaway author in the party, now would be a cool time to have the devils come after them. Stuff like that. So it's really cool that they didn't just tack on this concept of the character secrets, and they actually wrote some in a way that they really integrate into the adventure in a meaningful way and can really alter stuff if they make their secret known. So that's super cool, and I really like it. Okay, so now it is time for the rest of the players to exit, and if you are a Dungeon Master who wants to know some of the more story bits and what I think of them and whether or not I think they're compelling, or if you're somebody that just isn't going to get to play this anyway, so you're going to stick around, welcome. But anybody that has the potential to play in this game, go away, because I don't want to ruin it for you. Okay? Okay. So the story structure of this is really interesting and cool, and I think they've done a good job of making it not feel like a slog at early levels, because you have the 10 towns, which are 10 different communities in close proximity with one another, and you can pick any of them for the starting town for the party. And you have 3 options essentially for the starting quest. There are 2 starting quest options, and then each town has its own individual unique quest, which the starting town's unique quest, you could just have that be the first quest as well. So that's really up to you. But what I really appreciate and like is that they clearly spent a lot of time with these 10 different communities, trying to make them feel different, trying to make them feel alive, and also trying to make them feel dying. Like these communities are suffering because of the winter and are at various stages of that slow death of community. And so I really like how much attention was paid to the 10 towns. Because not going to lie, when I was reading it, I saw that chapter 1 was going to be so much longer because there were 10 different communities with at least a page of information about it. It was, that was a lot. But I'm so glad I read all of them. I'm so glad that I got to interact with these quests and really get a sense for the town and their needs and what they're up against. And a lot of these quests do plant seeds for adventures down the line and do feed into the overarching story, which is great. And it would have felt like a waste if you have all of this time spent with these communities and none of the things you're doing for them feed into the later story. So I'm glad that they had that continuity and they had that through line going into it. So yeah, the party starts off hopping from town to town. A lot of the quests take you from one community to another, and so you get to touch on them, and you can pick up multiple quests at the same time if you want. So yeah, that's your first 4 levels, is interacting with these communities. And the book is written in such a way they only intend you to interact with 3 to 5-ish. I mean, 5 is probably the recommended because that's how you get them to 4th level. They can start chapter 2 at 3rd level, but it's just going to be a little bit tougher, and they'll hit 3rd level after they help 3 communities. So yeah, that's the first chapter, is getting to know these communities, getting from level 1 to 4, and that's why I say it's so necessary. Because you're getting to know these communities, you're getting to care about the characters, and there are some really cool, unique characters that they've introduced, especially the various speakers of the town. So I highly recommend letting your party live in this space, letting them take their time, get to know these people. Don't push them through this chapter, because you will be doing a disservice to the story down the road if you just try to usher them through like, okay, yeah, let's get on to the main story. Don't do that. Chapter 2 is very similar, but a little bit bigger in the sense that the chapter 1 quests, you're kind of staying in the towns for these quests and investigating things happening in the town. And in chapter 2, you start getting quests to go out into the wilderness. Like, hey, we have this problem out here that we want you to go deal with. And then they come back. And so you're getting a bit more of the wilderness, a bit more random encounters. There's random encounter tables, which if you know me, you know, yay. So yeah, there's a lot of things that the PCs can do in chapter 2. And you can also have chapter 1 stuff. If they go to a brand new town after they've hit 4th level, you can have them do one of the town quests in place of one of the chapter 2 quests if you want. Now, my only complaint with chapter 2 is the advancement system is a little murky. They talk about they hit a level when they do this, they hit another level when they do that, and they hit the 3rd level and get to level 7 when they do this. But it's entirely possible that they might accomplish like the milestone for each of these in one session. If they're working towards these different goals, it might be like, oh, tonight you all gain 3 levels. Whereas in chapter 1, it was very clear that they start at first level. Once they complete the starting quest, they're at second level. Once they complete 3 town quests, they're at third level. Once they complete 5 town quests, they're at fifth level. That's very clear. And it's impossible to do all of those at once. Whereas in chapter 2, it was much less clear and has the potential for some wacky shenanigans in terms of leveling at the table, where they go from level 4 to level 7 in 1 or 2 sessions, just the way timing works out. So that's my only real complaint with how chapter 2 is done, is I wish the advancement was a little bit more clear cut like it is in chapter 1 if you're going to go with the milestone system, which they do. Or you can just throw that out the window, go with XP, and you don't have to worry about any of this. Now, chapter 3 is where the adventure starts. The much more linear focused, where the PCs have discovered this threat to Icewind Dale and they have to go deal with it. And much to many of your surprise, I imagine, it is not the person on the cover of this book. There are multiple threats to Icewind Dale, and it's not just Auril, the Frostmaiden. She is one of them, but she is not the only one. And to get into, we're in spoiler territory at this point, so I'll just drop. But it's entirely possible that the PCs, they would have to get some really great rolls. But it is possible that the PCs could take out Auril well before the adventure is over. She is not potentially the big bad of the adventure, which is interesting. And they give a good lore justification as to why a god could be killed by mid-tier characters. So don't worry about that. They haven't like nerfed the concept of godhood in D&D. But that was surprising to me as to how in danger Auril was in terms of the PC dynamic. So yeah, chapter 3, they find this threat, they go to deal with it, and they are presented with a moral dilemma of sorts. So getting into some more potentially spoilery stuff, but this is the start of the proper adventure, so it's not going to ruin your enjoyment of the reading. And in fact, I think it's in like the intro that this is part of the adventure. So the party is going to deal with this Duergar tyrant who's looking to take over Icewind Dale. And just as they're about to get to his stronghold, a dragon that he has created out of this special material flies overhead towards 10 towns. And the players have to make a choice. Do we continue our assault and maintain the element of surprise that we have established? Or do we go save 10 towns? And that decision has very real consequences and is why, as I said earlier in the video, you cannot skip chapter 1 or chapter 2. Because if you skip chapter 1 and just start with chapter 2 and more wildernessy stuff, and you're not forcing the PCs to spend time with these people that live in these towns, they're going to continue on to the Duergar almost 100% of the time. You might have a stick-in-the-mud paladin that's going to be like, no, we have a duty to the people. But if you have a party that has spent time with these NPCs and grown to care about them through helping them and seeing how much good they can do, then you're going to have that pullback, that temptation to be like, it would be great to deal with this threat now, but we can't let the people die. And they will die. The chapter 4 is where they go after the dragon. So you might have to like start chapter 3, insert chapter 4, finish chapter 3 kind of thing. Chapter 4 goes over the timeline and the timetable of the dragon's destruction and how long it takes them to destroy each town and how many people die and what happens if the town is destroyed. And it's devastating. Like it's the party is going to really understand the meaning of consequences if they think, oh, we'll go deal with the Duergar and then we'll come deal with the dragon that's attacking the first town. No. You as the DM need to track the amount of time it takes them to clear out the Duergar stronghold, which is going to take a while. And if they take a long rest while doing that, I mean, it's bad news for 10 towns. If they take a short rest while doing it, it's bad news for like a quarter of 10 towns. So yeah, you need to track that time and make it clear when they're headed back down the mountain that they just see smoke on the horizon. And they have to book it to get to the next town. So that's a cool thing. I like that kind of consequence and that decision making, and I'm all about tough moral choices in gaming. Obviously, it's more often the territory of video games, but I like it when tabletop role playing games introduce this element of here's where the story branches. Do you continue down this path and make it easier for yourself, or do you go try to save people and do the right thing, but make things more difficult for yourself down the line? Getting into chapter 5 through the rest of the book is where we start getting into the more twists and turns, and characters that you met in the town start playing a bigger role in the adventure and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'm not going to get into the minutia of that because it does read like a really compelling, interesting story. And I want you all to experience that because I've already told you to go buy the book. And I want you to have fun watching this adventure unfold before you so that you can then unfold it before your players, because it is a great story to read and a lot of fun. And there's a lot of super inventive things they've done in this book. I do want to talk about the ending. There is an epilogue chapter. One, it is possible for your party to get a summon Tarask scroll. They will end this adventure at level 12, and they have a scroll where they can summon a Tarask. Good luck if your PCs do that. It does provide some like guidance on if they do it here, then this happens. If they do it here, then this happens. So yeah, there is a really compelling way that they can use it, where basically Arl's stronghold is on an island that is surrounded by the moving sea. And so they basically say if they summon the Tarask there, then the Tarask destroys everything and then hibernates because it can't go anywhere. So yeah, summoning a Tarask is something that the players can do at the very end of the game, and gods help you if they do. The epilogue. So there are 3 different endings for this game. I would love to say that they are nuanced. That's not even the right word. Complicated, complex. They're not. It's if they eliminate Arl, summer returns. If they don't, winter continues and gets worse. The third ending, so there's basically the good ending, the bad ending, and the what ending, which I'm not going to spoiler for you all because it is bonkers. I can't describe it without just giving it away because it is so out of left field, and I read it, it was just, what? But I will only say that it opens up a campaign from levels 12 to 20 in a way unlike the other 2 endings. The other 2 endings are the world goes on in one of these 2 ways, and you can continue playing if you like. The third one is a holy crap, we have to keep going moment. So yeah, that's all I will say about the third ending. It's great, and it's totally up to the players. It's not up to you whether or not they get the third ending. The players have to do a very specific thing in order to activate the third ending. But if they do, you can chuck this and start on your own written adventure, or go pick up another module and be like, okay, we're doing this in this new experience. So yeah, definitely check out that third ending and let me know what you think down in the comments, because it is awesome and wild. So overall thoughts about the adventure, and I've kind of touched on my overall thinking throughout, but just as a concise end of the video sort of thing, I like the book. I think it is worth picking up. I think there is a lot of stuff that you can steal from the book, not just in the form of monsters, but also really cool locations and story ideas. And this adventure also is very easy to transport into other settings, I would say. Obviously, you have to change some of the proper nouns given the setting that you're plopping it into, but it's not a difficult one because it is so remote. It's not like you're having the party hop down to Waterdeep for a couple of days and then come back. So yeah, this is set in Forgotten Realms, but it is very easy to transport to another place. But the only big complaint that I have is the fact that the character advancement past chapter 1 gets a little bit murky, gets less clear, and is less linear, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. It is less like the PCs do this thing that can only happen and they will gain a level. And then something that will happen a few sessions later happens and they gain a level. It's much more like things could happen very quickly for your game. So you may want to keep an eye out for that. But I do love the story. I love the storytelling. I love how there are a lot of different factions and enemies working at the same time, trying to gain the upper hand. And the party is there to protect Icewind Dale, to protect 10 towns, and fight against these outside elements that are trying to overtake the town. And there's a great campaign to be had here. There's a great continuation of this where the PCs either get the good ending or the bad ending, and they have to contend with the world that is left behind, and they have to push through and continue to help 10 towns. If they get the good ending, give them the opportunity to celebrate that win and then introduce a new threat. Now that Icewind Dale is more hospitable, obviously other elements are going to come up there to try and take advantage of the area. So yeah, this lends itself very well to a continuation of a campaign. So overall, big thumbs up. I love the character secrets. Such a great idea. I definitely want to implement that into every game I play from here on out. But yeah, let me know what you all thought. Have you checked out the book yet? Share your thoughts down in the comments or on our Discord server. And let me know what you think. I really like it, but were there other problems that you had with the book? Let me know. Or feel free to head on over to our Facebook group, The Geek Pantheon, or you can send us a message on Twitter or Instagram at The Geek Pantheon. Or if you truly want to go next level with it, you can join our Patreon over at patreon.com/The Geek Pantheon. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.